You know, when you think about a folk music icon, there's a certain image that comes to mind. It's kind of sepia toned.
Right. An old guitar, maybe a quiet life somewhere.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's comforting. It's predictable. But today, well, the man we're talking about, he just shatters that whole archetype.
We're looking at a figure who is, almost a saint in certain circles. And weirdly enough, in parts of Toronto, Canada, we're talking about Goce Nikolovski.
And most people know the headline, right? He's the Pearl of the Balkans. Bizer Balkanski.
Mm-hmm.
If you were anywhere near the Balkans in the 1990s or in the diaspora, that name means one thing. A guy in a tuxedo on a huge stage singing these massive patriotic anthems.
And that's the accepted story. He's the voice of Macedonian identity right as the country is looking for independence. But if you stop there, you are missing, 80% of the real story?
Which is exactly why I wanted to do this deep dive. I started digging, and I was expecting, a straight line. Folk singer starts as a folk singer.
But that's not what you found.
Not even close. I found a fist-fighting rock and roll frontman from the 1960s beat scene who once played a concert for 28 hours straight.
It's just a wild misconception that he was, born a folk singer. His career arc is one of the most fascinating shifts in modern music history. It's not just a genre change.
That's a whole philosophy change.
Exactly.
So that's our mission today. We are going to trace that entire arc. From the smoky, sweaty rock clubs in Serbia in the 60s through his sort of pop years, and then to those massive festival stages in Macedonia.
We have to talk about Canada, the picnic grounds of Toronto, where he became a genuine hero.
And then, of course, we have to talk about the silence at the end. It's a story about endurance, family, and the incredible weight of becoming a national symbol.
A heavy price, for sure.
So let's rewind. Forget the tuxedo. Where does this story actually begin? Because I assumed a small village in Macedonia.
And that's where you'd be wrong. To find the start, we actually have to go to Nisha in Serbia in the mid-1960s. And we are not looking for a folk singer. We're looking for a rock star.
Yeah. The beat music era. What was that scene like? What's the vibe?
Well, it was a time of huge cultural acceleration. You had young people listening to Radio Luxembourg, hearing the Beatles, the Rolling Stones for the first time.
And they wanted a piece of it.
They were desperate to replicate that energy. So it wasn't traditional music. It was loud. It was electric. And it was, a bit rebellious. And Goce was right at the heart of it.
So he joins this band, Daltoni, the Daltons.
He does.
But the way he joined, this isn't your typical I went to an audition story, is it?
No, it plays out more like something from a movie about street gangs. Goce was already the lead singer for a rival band called Rubinci the Rubies.
Okay.
And the Daltons were the big dogs in town, but they needed a real frontman, a charismatic singer. They saw Goce and they just decided, we're taking him.
When you say taking him, you don't mean they asked nicely.
It was a physical altercation. This transfer, as they called it, was so controversial in the local scene that it led to a literal brawl. Fists were thrown between the two bands over who got to keep the lead singer.
That is just incredible. It paints such a different picture. We think of him as this dignified, almost sorrowful figure later in life.
And here he is, a kid in his 20s, so dynamic that bands are literally fighting in the street over him.
And it worked for the Daltons.
Oh, it paid off big time. Before Goce, they were doing instrumental covers, like The Shadows. Very clean, very safe.
Yeah.
With Goce up front, they got gritty. They started moving towards hard rock. They were covering Jethro Tull, Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Wait, Jethro Tull?
Jethro Tull.
So the man who sang Pearl of the Balkans was also, at one point, growling out the lyrics to Aqualung.
It just shows you the range he had, that power, that rasp in his voice. And speaking of power, we have to talk about the marathon.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I read this in the notes and I had to check the number twice.
Yeah.
March 1970. What happened?
The band just felt they had something to prove. Maybe it was a pride thing, maybe they felt looked down on by the bigger scenes. So they set up a concert in Nisha with one simple goal.
Which was?
Don't stop playing.
We hear about long concerts today. Taylor Swift does 3.5 hours, and it's a headline. Springsteen does 4.
The Daltons played for 28 hours, straight through.
28 hours?
Yeah.
That isn't a concert. That's a medical experiment.
It's pure insanity. They performed over 300 songs. Just think about the physicality of that. Your fingers are bleeding. Your voice is absolutely shredded.
It's just standing up for that long.
Yeah.
Why? Was it just a stunt?
I think it was a statement. It was about intensity, about dedication, and it showed that Goce, even back then, didn't do things by halves. He was there to give every single ounce of himself to the audience. That trait never left him.
Is there any recording of what this early rock Goce sounded like?
We have a little bit. They released one EP in 1968 called Ruka od Sna. There's a track on it, Volum Našu Istinu, and you can hear it. It's raw. It's so different from the controlled, almost operatic voice he developed later.
So the band is huge locally. They're breaking endurance records.
Yeah.
And then they break up.
The rock dream ends, and Goce moves to Skopje in 1971 to go solo. This is where that difficult second act usually begins.
And this is where we meet the hidden architect of his entire career, his father, George Nikolovski.
This is the part of the story that just fascinates me, because usually the story is, Dad wanted me to be a lawyer, I wanted to rock.
Right, the classic conflicts.
This was the complete opposite. Georgie wasn't just supportive, he was the engine. He was a composer, a songwriter. And get this, he wrote the early rock tracks for the Daltons.
No way.
And then he turns around and writes the songs for Goce's pop career, like his first solo hit, Dochty.
That is mind-blowing. So the same guy is writing the gritty rock anthems and the sweet pop ballads.
Exactly. It reframes everything.
Right.
This wasn't just Goce finding his own way. It was a family partnership from the very beginning. Goce was the voice and the charisma, but Georgie was the pen.
So Goce spends the 70s and 80s as a successful musician, but not a legend. Not yet.
Correct. If his career had ended in, say, 1989, he'd be remembered as a very good pop singer, but nothing more.
But then comes 1990. The pivot point for everything.
And to get 1990, you have to look at the map. Yugoslavia is starting to crack. The Berlin Wall has just fallen. The old world is dissolving. And people are, frankly, scared. They're looking for an identity to hold on to.
And into that moment, Goce steps onto the stage at the folk fest Volondovo.
And he's not singing rock music. He's not singing generic pop. He sings a song called Bajzer Balkanski, Pearl of the Balkans.
And he wins the festival.
He wins first prize, but that's almost a footnote. The song immediately became something much bigger than a contest winner. It became an anthem.
Why that song? Why did it connect so deeply right at that moment?
Because it said what everyone was feeling, but maybe didn't have the words for. It was about national pride, about the beauty of the homeland, about a distinctly Macedonian identity at the exact moment that identity was becoming a political statement. He stopped being just a singer.
He became a symbol.
He became a representative. And it's amazing how quickly that rock Goce just vanished. He put on the tuxedo, and suddenly it felt like he'd been singing these majestic folk songs his whole life.
He channeled all that rock and roll intensity.
All of it. The grit, the endurance from those marathons. He poured it into these patriotic ballads. Songs like Zapece Said Anjali and Od Marchka Nima Pomila came next. He basically cornered the market on national emotion.
And that emotion traveled. Which brings us to the diaspora, and especially for our listeners in Canada, in the GTA. For them, Goce wasn't just a voice on the radio.
Oh, he was practically a neighbor. This is a massive part of his legacy. In the 90s, with all the turmoil back home, you had this huge, tight-knit Macedonian community in Toronto, and they were just eking for a connection to home.
I had to paint the picture for people. The annual Illenden picnic.
Right. Imagine a hot, humid day in July in a park in Mississauga. There are thousands of people. The air is thick with the smoke from charcoal grills.
Kebabs, burgers.
Kids running around in soccer jerseys, speaking English with a Canadian accent. It's a very normal suburban North American scene.
And then, on a makeshift stage, Goce Nikolovski walks out.
And in that instant, you're not in Toronto anymore. He starts singing Bajzer Balkanski. And you see grown men, tough guys, construction workers just openly weeping.
It's that concept of Beshelbari, isn't it?
Yes. The migrant workers, people who left home to make a living. It's a word that's just loaded with nostalgia and sacrifice. And Goce became their patron saint. He didn't just visit Toronto. He was part of the social fabric there in the 90s and early 2000s.
So it wasn't entertainment for them.
It was a lifeline. It was proof that their identity mattered, that they hadn't been forgotten. He would collaborate with local legends there, like Vaska Ilieva, bridging the old village songs with his new hits.
He made it okay to be proud.
He made it powerful, and this wasn't just Canada. He was doing the same in Australia, Sydney, Canberra, and all across the U.S. He was a traveling ambassador for a country finding its feet.
He was the glue holding the diaspora's identity together.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So, on the outside, it's a perfect story. Rocker turned hero, loved at home, adored abroad. But we had to pivot now to the private man, because the reality was very different.
It's a tough dissonance to reconcile. Goce lived a quiet life in the Lysis neighborhood of Skopje. By all accounts, he was a sensitive, private family man. Not a diva at all.
But the weight of being a national symbol, that has to be crushing.
Immensely. And as the music industry changed in the 2000s, becoming more commercial, maybe more ruthless, and as that initial adrenaline of the independence era faded, the sources say he struggled. He struggled with the pressure.
Which brings us to December 16th, 2006.
A very dark day in this story.
Walk us through what we know.
Neighbors in his building heard a gunshot at around 10 o'clock at night. But, and this is the part that is so haunting, he wasn't found until 3 in the morning.
That 5-hour gap. Just
Yeah.
silence in the apartment. It's such a lonely image when you contrast it with stadiums full of people chanting his name.
It is. The police arrived, and it was confirmed to be a suicide. The door was locked from the inside. He was 59 years old.
He left a note.
He did. And the nature of that note, I think, tells you everything about the man behind the symbol. It wasn't a manifesto for the nation or a message to his fans. It was a private note addressed only to his family.
It comes right back to the beginning, doesn't it? That father-son partnership. The family was always the core.
Always. Despite the global fame and the Pearl of the Balkans title, his world, in the end, was about the people he loved. He was a man who gave so much of himself to the public. I mean, a 28-hour concert.
He gave everything.
He gave everything, but he kept his pain private. It's the ultimate paradox of the performer. They're a channel for everyone else's emotions, but they can become so isolated by their own.
And thousands came to the funeral.
They did. Many flew in from the diaspora, from Toronto, from Australia, people who felt he was a part of their family coming to say goodbye. It proved the connection he built was real. It was deep.
So when we zoom out, what is the legacy of Goce Nikolovski? He's not just the folk singer in the tuxedo.
No. I think he's a perfect mirror of his region's history. He starts with rock and roll energetic, looking west, part of a bigger Yugoslavia. Then, as the region fractures and looks inward, he does the same. He becomes the voice of specific national pride.
And then he carries that voice to the people who had to leave.
Exactly. His legacy isn't one song, it's that he managed to embody the spirit of his people at every single stage of their modern journey, from the sweat of the rock club to the tears at the immigrant picnic.
It really makes you rethink how we categorize these icons. We want to put them in a neat little box. He's a folk singer, she's a pop star.
We want them to be simple. But if you just scratch the surface, you find the marathon runner, the brawler, the son, and the man who is suffering in silence. Goce Nikolovski was never just one thing. He was complex and gritty and deeply human.
And maybe that's why the music still resonates.
Yeah.
Because it came from somewhere real.
That's
A powerful reminder to listen a little closer and maybe think about the person holding the microphone. That's going to do it for this deep dive.
a fascinating, tragic life to explore.
Thanks for being with us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.